We've all heard the expression, where there's a will, there's a row. Well, thankfully that is generally not the case. Making a will is a hugely important issue for anybody with assets of any value. So what key points should you know when making a will? Well, to explain all is Owen Casey, solicitor with Rathfarnham-based firm Dillon Solicitors. Owen, you're very welcome.
Thanks, Dillon.
Let's start off with what exactly is a will and what should you be putting in a will?
So a will, in simple terms, is a document in which you set out how your estate and your assets are going to be administered after you pass away. And it only becomes effective from when you pass away. So up until that point, you can revoke it, you can amend it, and you can change it as you wish.
So what are some of the key things that you need to have in your will?
So the first key thing is you need to decide on appointing an executor, or more than one if you wish. The executor is the person who's going to take control of your assets and distribute your estate when you pass away. They have to be able to deal with things like tax and so forth on your behalf. We would normally advise people to appoint more than one person for practical reasons. One of the executors might want to act, or one of them might die before you. And usually people like to appoint a trusted family member, somebody who's likely to be reliable and that they will be able to deal with the situation when it arises. It's also important for obvious practical reasons that you let the person know that you've appointed them in your will and where the will is, so that they can deal with it when the time comes.
Because they can go find it afterwards.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not always as straightforward as you might think.
I imagine, yeah. And do you need witnesses as well for a will?
You do. That's one of the other key formalities. Aside from the actual terms of the will, you have to have two people witness you signing it, and those people have to also sign it as witnesses.
And can anybody be a witness?
Anybody who stands to benefit under the will can't be one of the two witnesses. And equally, if somebody has a spouse or a civil partner who's due to benefit under the will, that person can't be one of the witnesses.
Okay, so if somebody out there is thinking of making a will at the moment, what would you advise them is the best way to provide, let's say if they had young children in their will?
Yeah, and this is a common issue for people, obviously. If you're a parent with young children, you can appoint a guardian in your will to take over custody of your children in the event you and or your spouse were to pass away. Equally, you can set up a trust and appoint a trustee who's usually one and the same person as your executor, and that person would hold your assets in trust while your children are in the process of growing up, and they could distribute the assets for living expenses and education for the children, etc. And then the trust is wound up or finished when the youngest child reaches 18 or 21, and the estate is administered to your children then after that.
What about, though, the tax implications around inheritance?
So this is the big consideration for people, is that what the people who benefit under the will are going to pay in terms of tax. And for the inheritance tax, basically the amount of tax somebody pays will depend on their relationship to you. If it's a spouse or a civil partner, normally they won't pay any tax. If it's one of your children, they have a large tax-free threshold over and above which they pay tax. And then depending on other relationships, other people have a lower tax-free threshold over and above which they pay tax. If you have a scenario where somebody comes into us and they don't have a spouse or civil partner and they don't have children, what we would advise them generally to do is to split their assets among as many people as possible in their will to minimise the tax liability for each person who's due to benefit under the will. And another thing they can do is they can provide benefits to charities in their will, which is generally tax-free.
Okay. Finally, if you don't have a will, then what happens to your estate?
Ultimately, if you don't have a will, the situation is called intestacy, and the Succession Act sets out the rules as to what's going to happen with your estate and your assets if you pass away without a will. Essentially, the bottom line is you lose control of your assets and as to who's going to administer them on your behalf. So ultimately, it's a good idea to put together a will because it gives you peace of mind as to who's going to deal with your assets and that you're going to be looking after your loved ones in the way that you want when you've passed away.
Okay, well, many thanks for that advice.
Thank you.